Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing, forget about it, Bad Brad Berkwitt. As I always say and always will, it's about moving humanity forward. All right, folks, remember, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing, forget about it, Bad Brad Berkwitt. And you're watching another Bad Brad Berkwitt show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Now, make sure you follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, it's at BadBradRSR. And check out my great writing team on ringsidereport.com. Well, today, folks, I have another special guest who is moving humanity forward. She is a former Navy JAG officer. She was a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the Florida's 18th Congressional District, who ran in 2016 and 2018. She is also the founder and CEO of the Center for Employment Justice in Washington, D.C. So that's a lot. And we're going to talk about a lot of different things today during this 360 conversation that you only get on the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show. So without further ado, forget about it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to my show, the one, the only, me, Pam, in your undisclosed location. We won't tell anybody where you're at, but obviously you got some sunshine, so that's a good thing. So welcome and good afternoon today, Pam, to the show. I appreciate you coming on.
Hey, anything for a fellowship, mate.
There you go. We're going to talk about that. So let's do this. I always start out with saying this. I do a lot of research, but if I have something wrong in my notes, I'm not shy. Say, hey, Brad, it's actually this. No problem. Let's get this as factually correct as we can for the viewers. That's why they like this show. Okay.
Alrighty.
So we're going to start out at the beginning and talk about you being born overseas, I believe in Turkey. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and it looks like you grew up in Morocco, Syria, Brazil, and several U.S. cities before winding up in Oakland, California, go to high school. Is that correct?
That's correct. Went to public high school in Oakland.
Okay, so do this. Talk about growing up overseas, about how old you were in different countries a little bit for the viewers.
So my dad, before he married my mom, he was a naval officer. He was one of the first 5 Black naval officers on the USS Midway. He graduated from the University of Kansas with an ROTC and partial baseball scholarship. And so when he came out of the University of Kansas, he went into the United States Navy, one of the last services to desegregate their officer corps. And so he ended up on the Midway. He was the deck officer in the USS Midway, a big old aircraft carrier that was cruising through the Philippines. And he met my mom, who was a Californian. He was a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. My mother was a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, like our vice president. And they met at a fraternity mixer, fell rapidly in love and, courted by letter, because he was deployed after that. They got married, and after his time in the Navy, my dad decided to go into the Foreign Service. And it was a very, very new time for African Americans to serve in the Foreign Service. In fact, John F. Kennedy had just opened up the Foreign Service to non-white. And so my father, he had this degree from the University of Kansas. He was always interested in international affairs, just always was. He had a college counselor that had encouraged him to study languages and things like that. So he decided that he was going to specialize in the in the Middle East, because it was an area of growing interest for the United States. And one language could get him access to a lot of different countries, specifically Arabic. So he learned Arabic and he became a specialist in that part of the world. But even though he was learning Arabic culturally, he was having to learn about Islam and all these other things. And one of his duty stations early on in his career was Lebanon, where my brother was born. And then he was transferred to Turkey, where I was born. And so we were an African-American family projecting American values in very volatile parts of the world. Both Turkey and Lebanon at the time had student uprisings and civil wars and so on and so forth. And so we were, my father's job was in the cultural attaché world. Like he was in USIA, which is information agency. And so that's like the Voice of America and cultural exchanges, student exchanges, and things like that. So he was trying to build bridges between the United States and these countries on cultural grounds and sort of democratic values, what we espouse as democratic values. And so that's what I grew up with. I went, from Turkey, we went to Morocco. My first language actually was, as a baby, was Turkish, and then I learned Arabic and French because Morocco is a French-speaking colony, if you will. So I learned French and Arabic and Turkish before I spoke anything but Pidgin English with my parents. And I learned how to read and write in French after we moved from Morocco and Fez and Tangiers. We moved to Syria, Damascus. And, I learned how to read and write at the French Lycée, so I was fluent as a child in Arabic and French. And then, my parents divorced, as many families do. My mom went back to California, from where she was from. And so, we were really young. I was 6 and my brother was probably 7.5 or 8. And, we went with mom. And so we went from Damascus, Syria to Oakland, California. And you want to talk about a culture shock.
Yeah.
So that's how we ended up in I ended up in California. Thereafter, my father continued his foreign service career. He remarried, and my stepmother is French. And so, during the summers, I would visit her family in the south of France. And so I was able to keep up my French that way. And they were very close. I was very close to them. And, he took other duty stations after the divorce. He was in Paris, he was in Cairo, he was and eventually became United States ambassador to Qatar. If you don't know what that country is, in a few months you will, because it's hosting the World Cup. But he rose to ambassadorship on his merit. He was a career foreign service. He wasn't a political appointee at a crucial time in Qatar's development. At the time, it was headed by a king, and he had a crown prince, and the king was very sort of old school, and the crown prince was more Western oriented. And it was during that time, the crown prince wanted to take over, and there was a bloodless coup in Qatar. This was before 9/11. And because my father was very close to the crown prince and knew him and knew his attitudes, he encouraged the United States to recognize the crown prince as the rightful emir. That decision was one of the best decisions the United States ever made, because shortly thereafter 9/11 did happen, and we had to, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia kicked out all our troops, and guess where they went?
Yeah.
They went to Qatar, because Qatar had such a strong diplomatic relationship with the United States, starting with that bloodless coup that happened when my father was ambassador.
Okay. It
So
looks
that's
like
that.
okay. It looks like you attended UC Davis for your bachelor's and your master's degree. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you attended Boston College Law School.
Yep.
Talk about that time in your life.
I was inspired to go to law school because of Rodney King, right? So Rodney King happened when I was still in undergrad, but the actual prosecution of the officers took place when I was sort of, in my first year of grad school. And I'm literally, at the time I was getting a master's degree in public communication and speech, right? And here I was taking sort of this really intellectual approach to rhetoric and persuasion and all that. And I'm looking at the TV and I'm like literally yelling at the TV, like, don't ask him that, ask him this. Where's your follow-up? Like, oh my God, you just let him do that, and I'm sitting here convincing myself that I could do a better job of prosecuting these officers than the ones who did. And so I had this like epiphany, like, I need to go to law school. So, from that point on, I made a plan to go to law school, and lo and behold, that plan got executed. I ended up getting into law school and graduating, and I, won moot court, and, got on law review and did all the things that you're supposed to do to prove that you're intellectually sound in that environment. But ultimately, while I was in law school, another thing happened. There was a movie that came out called A Few Good Men. And if you remember that movie, A Few Good Men, with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise and Demi Moore, I was like, I could do that. That would be fun.
I was stationed, by the way, on that note, I was stationed in the real Gitmo, not the movie version,
right?
1995, but go ahead.
I applied to be a U.S. Navy JAG. And remember, I told you my dad was in the Navy before I was born, and my dad is super nostalgic about the Navy. He had a wonderful experience despite, having been in the military in the 50s. So, he told me great stories about the Navy and naval aviation and all of that. And so to me, I had a just strong affinity for service to my country because I grew up with that, and I had a strong affinity towards the Navy. And so I applied and I got in, and my first duty station was Norfolk, Virginia. I was assigned as criminal defense counsel. So I was exactly like Kathy there, defending the sailors and Marines that got themselves into trouble. And because of that, I did get a chance to represent some Marines in Guantanamo Bay. I did get a chance to do that. It wasn't, conduct unbecoming or code red. It was actually, smoking weed with the Jamaicans. But anywho,
I remember them.
yeah, I got a chance to do all of that. And so from Norfolk, I ended up going to Bahrain as officer in charge of the detachment out there, between Gulf Wars. So the first Gulf War had happened, the second Gulf War had not yet happened, and we were doing marine interdiction operations against Saddam Hussein. We were flying those no-fly zones, and trying to stop the smuggling of weapons and guns and oil, of course, out of Iraq. So being in Bahrain, my job, I lived in Bahrain, but all of my work was on the ships that cruised into the Persian Gulf from either the west or the east coast. And at that time, because Saddam Hussein was kind of playing cat and mouse with the UN inspectors and so forth, so there were times when it was not that intense. And then there were times where we had like 3 carrier groups in a very small body of water in the Persian Gulf. So everybody, was very, very spun up. And we were always afraid that he was going to have anthrax. So that whole anthrax vaccine.
I remember it.
Right. So that was all on my watch. And it was always, us, because we were the tip of the spear. I mean, we were in Persian Gulf and there were people getting kicked out for anthrax vaccination refusal back then, right?
Oh, really? Vaccination refusal?
Oh, yeah, because, that was back in the day. But see, the thing was, the anthrax vaccine was very different because it wasn't one vaccine. It was like 6, it was like 3, it was several shots, and they were very painful. And people got, and also everybody understood that the vaccine didn't actually keep you it wasn't really all that prophylactic. It just kept you from dying, but you came pretty close to dying. Like anthrax is an ugly.
Oh yeah, I know.
So even then there were people that were refusing anthrax, and they all got, kicked out eventually. But there was this problem where it was only the people in the Persian Gulf that were getting vaccinated. And there were, admirals that were like, well, why should we have, people tip of the spear, getting kicked out, but the people back home are not getting kicked out because they don't even have that vaccine. It wasn't a vaccine for everyone. That since has changed, and I think they, kind of modified some things. But anyway, I go on, but because I can about those days. But that's how I ended up in the Persian Gulf.
Okay, so let me ask you that, because I was going into that to ask you that about when you were in. So first thing, when I saw Bahrain, which I've been to, I was there during the Gulf War. Do you remember the little bottles of pure cologne that would come in the little velvet thing, and you had to open it up and mixed it with alcohol? Yep, used to get those all the time. So what I want to ask you about your naval service, you talked about, what is one thing that you would say you really liked, and then flip it? What's one thing that you didn't like about naval service? The first, what you loved.
It's all but impossible to put into words the kind of camaraderie you develop in the military. It is unique. It is intense. It is not even necessarily built on friendship or the people that you like. It's a kind of cauldron of intensity that you share with a group of people. And if anybody who's been in that cauldron can recognize that experience in anybody else who's been in that cauldron, right? Like it's almost instantaneous. So here I am, I'm this Black woman, progressive liberal, and I can have great conversations with a 75-year-old white dude in the middle of Pennsylvania because we're both Navy, and we can talk Navy, and we could talk Navy for hours, even though we were just in the Navy at different times with different duty stations and different responsibilities and different worldviews. We are still shipmates. And that is something that is unique and special and priceless. And it's something, one of the greatest prides I have is that my dad is my father. He's my mentor. He's my friend, but he's also my shipmate. And that's a very unique relationship that I have with my dad because we have that bonding experience. So if you ask me the thing that I like most about my Navy time, it is that. That was the thing that I appreciate the most. The closest people to me are some of the friendships and bonds that I made in that time. The thing that I like the least about my military service is that I dealt with the ones who didn't adjust, right? Because there's thousands of who adjust well, and they just make it work. They make it work with their families. They make it work with their children. They make sacrifices, and they just make it work. But there are some who just can't make it work, right? Or something goes down, And a lot of times what causes them to not be able to make it work is that when something does go sideways inside of them, they medicate with alcohol. More than anything else, they medicate with alcohol. And the Navy has, I think, one of the most entrenched drinking cultures and the most just unwillingness to admit the stress and the pain and the fear and the just isolation and the whatever. And so what happens is that we take people who develop problems in the military because of the stress of what they're doing, and then we put and if they don't handle it well, or they self-medicate, they do whatever, they get in trouble, and then we put them out of the civilian population with no help and say, oh look, well, you got to get out, you got a drinking problem, we can't have you. And then they get out and there's no backup there, right? Because if they do something, they drunk drive or whatever, they lose their VA benefits, they use their GI Bill, they lose all this stuff. And I just think that there's a callousness and a disconcern about what happens with our troops, and how service in and of itself, in that process, it changes you, and it can change you in very irreparable ways. And that's the thing that I find that I dislike the most about military service in general, and what I was exposed to in being the person with the job of trying to advocate on behalf of these people who are basically put in a meat grinder and then just kind of left out on the street, which is why we have so many homeless veterans. We have so many homeless veterans because of the lack of real support for these people, both in and out of the service.
Including the mental health issue of the people that got PTSD and whatever else that they've got. That's what drove me effing crazy with Trump when he said, remember when they were talking about, he said they were just headaches they had. No, they had PTSD.
They had traumatic brain injury.
Exactly, but he minimized it because he's, what? Okay, I want to ask you one more question off of that. That actually wasn't even a question on my notes, but let's talk about something. I want to see if we're on the same sheet of paper with this one. So January 6th, you have the insurrection. You have veterans. You even have one active duty. I think you follow Ron Filipkowski on Twitter. Correct. So yep. He puts out the videos and a lot of stuff. Yeah. So you had actually one active duty Marine Corps, I think major, real piece of work there, went inside. I'm not talking about the protesting with the signs, which is their right to do. I'm talking about going in because, they always want to minimize. No, they were outside. No, I'm talking about the people that went in and breached and beat up cops and did all that. Mm-hmm. So do you feel, this is how I feel, I want to see if you feel the same, any veteran or any retiree or active duty, which I know that was the least amount, but it was veterans and retirees that went there on January 6th that were caught. I feel personally that they should lose. I feel that they're traitors to this country and to the oath that they took to the Constitution, that they should lose their benefits. And if they were retirees, including Michael Flynn, who didn't actually go, but he helped stir it up, should be back court-martialed, lose their rank, and all of those people should go to prison. And when they get out, they shouldn't have any more benefits because they were traitors.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. The thing is, it's not hard to not violate your oath.
Right.
It's not hard. And the thing is, when you were on active duty, and certainly when I was on active duty, we were so ingrained in monitoring ourselves and how we behaved in public so as not to bring shame upon service, mm-hmm. right? Like, it's ingrained in you that you are not going to act a fool in public. You are not going to get drunk or do drunk or disorderly because you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to do anything political, you're going to take off your Navy identifying information. You're not going to be wearing your uniform. It cannot be tied to the military in any way. You have a First Amendment right to speak your mind and so forth. But you also know that there's parameters and limits on that.
Yes.
Because if you do act a fool and you get caught in something, it's not going to be an excuse that you had a First Amendment right. Like, even if you don't end up going to jail, it's going to take your career. And, military is all about promotability. It's all about making rank. It's all about making that next promotion.
Yep.
It's different than the police officers because they have, even though they have, a similar number of ranks, they have far fewer people who make rank above sergeant or lieutenant than in the military. You have whole numbers of people who make first class or second class petty officer, first class chief. There's so many, and everybody's always focused towards that, right? It's a little different than the police, where you could be a sergeant or you could be a patrol officer for the duration of your career and never make rank. You cannot be a seaman for the duration of your career.
Right.
Like, that's just not a thing, right? You get put out. So this idea that even if you weren't going to be in criminal trouble, if you got caught doing something untoward, you would still be tanking your career. And you would just not do that. Like, we grew up with the respect that the idea is that, look, military, you don't want to politicize the military, right? I remember that's why I had so many problems with what was done to Brett Crozier on that ship with the COVID. That's why I have so many problems when people were running, waving Trump signs when the president went on that ship. It's like, no. Flying the American flag is fine. Flying your unit flag is fine. But flying partisan political positions is not fine.
No, it's not.
And everybody knows that.
Right.
Right? So here we are. We know this. If you showed up on January 6th, and this is the thing that I know, some of them knew the degree of violence that was going to take place.
Yes.
But everybody knew something big was going to take place. Yes. Right? So Billy Joel Jim Bob and his brother inbred Jed knew something was going down and that they were going to be a part of that. Now, how do I know that? Because I was in Savannah, Georgia that day. Do keep in mind, that was the day after Warnock and Ossoff were elected, right?
Yes.
Where was I? I was in Georgia helping to turn out the vote for those two. I am on a corner waiting for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to come into town because, one's in Atlanta, one's in Savannah, right? Kamala Harris is, I'm sitting on the corner and there's a guy with a big old Trump sign because he knows that Kamala Harris is coming to town, blah, 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 and he's telling me what's going to happen on January 6th. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like, oh, we're going to have a great protest. He's like, everything's going to turn. Yep. Trump is going to be president. There's going to be, you don't even know what's coming. It's going to be bigger and more. And I'm like, if Billy Joe Jim Bob can tell Pam Keith on a corner in Savannah, Georgia, how violent it's going to be, don't tell me that Chris Wray in Washington, D.C. did not know. I'm sorry. Right. Don't. Just don't. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry knew what was going to go down. They may not have known exactly how or who all was going to be involved, but they all knew. So this idea that you had military people showing up there that had no clue that it was going to be violent is complete bullshit. Right. They knew.
And I talked about, so they didn't know, but they bought bear spray with them, and they brought this with them, and they brought that. And you talk about Billy Joe and inbred. I always use that line too, already with another similarity that we do. I always said Billy Joe and Jimmy Joe, when they started marching and Trump said, I'm going to march down there with you. I'll be the first one to throw one out there. When the fuck were they going to look at each other and say, hold up, look back and say, Trump isn't with us. We need to slow our roll because he's coming with us. No, because he had no intention ever going down there.
He was never going to go down there. It's just like he never served in Vietnam. Exactly. He would never.
He didn't serve in the fucking Salvation Army, let alone the U.S. Army.
Come on. But these people who did put on the uniform, these people who did go through basic training and boot camp and all this other stuff, these people who did make these sacrifices are idolizing a man who has sacrificed absolutely nothing in the duration of his life. And all because they have this envy of this archetypal macho man with this beautiful pinup on his arm who gets to do whatever the hell he wants and say whatever the hell he wants and has no modicum of restraint or kindness. And they think that is the ultimate man.
Yeah, it's not. It's a misogynist pig.
It's an asswipe.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go into another talking point. I want to read this for the viewers, and then we're going to put you in Florida for this part. So you have more than 20 years of legal experience, having worked at some of America's most prestigious law firms. Mm-hmm. In 2011, you were recruited to Florida to serve as senior in-house counsel for Next Era Energy Florida Power and Light Company. Mm-hmm. In 2016 and 2018, if I'm correct, you ran for the Democratic seat in Florida's 18th congressional district. Is that correct?
So there's a nuance there that you're missing.
Okay,
in 2016, I ran for U.S. Senate.
Okay, go ahead.
So I ran statewide as the first Black woman ever in the history of the state of Florida to run a qualified campaign for U.S. Senate. Okay. I had no money. People laughed at me like I was crazy. But I was tenacious as all hell. And I raised about $175,000, which would be great if I was running for PTA or something, but it ain't much if you're running for US Senate. Nevertheless, I got 175,000 votes, about 15.1% of the vote. I got the endorsement of the Miami Herald over both of my white male counterparts in the Democratic primary, both of whom were sitting members of Congress. And I wowed people because on the merits, on the strength of my record and my background, my knowledge of everything from foreign policy, military issues, environmental issues, because I worked for an energy company, right? I knew race issues, gender issues. I was broad and I was engaging and I had real solutions, right? Like I was the person with all the creative solutions on guns, on all these different issues. You know, I had issues. I was like, here's my idea. What do you think of my idea? On veterans, I had this whole platform. It was the only Democrats out there talking about a real platform for veterans. And I want to talk to you about that because I want to get your opinion on my ideas. But so I had put myself out there. People were like, well, it's ridiculous for you to think that you could be a senator. They didn't think it was ridiculous for Rick Scott to think he could be a senator, right? But they thought it was ridiculous for a Black female veteran with 3 degrees, you know, to be like, why? Why is that ridiculous? Because of the time, you know, 2016, it was not, I guess they weren't ready. So I ran for Congress in my area the next year, 2018. And again, it was one of these, you know, you haven't paid your dues. Who the hell do you think you are? And so I got defeated in the primary by a person who was basically, you know, helicoptered in from out of state and whose family was from that area, but she had lived in Florida since she was a child. And she came from a lot of money. And it was like, oh, well, she can self-fund, therefore she's a great candidate. Yeah, not so much. So, you know, we lost the seat then, and you know, we haven't been able to get it back. I ran again in 2020. I ended up being the Democratic nominee. I tried one more time, you know, because I don't give up easy. And you know, that time I came in very late. It was COVID. I came in the middle of nowhere because our Democratic candidate was, you know, doing the best he could, but just wasn't generating the kind of energy and focus that that seat needed. And I won the primary with 80% of the vote. To win a primary in that part of the state with 80% of the vote, when you're combining a very Black part of the district in North and you know, the most wealthy white part of Palm Beach County, combined, like how did I get 80% of the vote? Well, even though I was a progressive, I was able to talk to wealthy people and educated people, and I'm credible with my own Black community and Latino communities. I speak Spanish. Like there was all these different connectivities that I was making, and the party invested $0 and 0 cents in that race. They gave me not a dime. They just gave up. They said, screw it, whatever. Now, granted, this was an important state for Biden.
Right.
Okay. So no wonder he got his ass beat in Florida, because the party decided that there were all these seats that they just weren't going to compete in because they got that. Right. And that was the leadership of Cherie Bustos, which is, you know, one of the worst D-trip leaders I've ever seen or heard about. But that, you know, we go deep into the inside baseball of our party. And I am a bleeding heart liberal Democrat. So don't get me in this whole, oh, I'm disloyal to the party. Screw that. Right? Like I am a Democrat. I want Democrats to be successful because I know that it's the only way we beat Republicans. And I am critical of my own party. It's because I've got so much exposure to the inner workings of how the party works. But we're not a mission-oriented team.
Okay.
We're a team that's very emotional and very like about partisan loyalties and who's going to vote for whom and who's going to back whom up for what committees and who's going to back up Nancy and who's on the squad team and all this other crap, you know, and that's not mission oriented, right? The Republicans take a much more mercenary approach to elections and pretty much everything, right? You know, you're either with the team or against the team. They only have 2 dissenters. We have like total chaos on our side most of the time. The thing that is changing right now is that the policy gap, you know, where the vast majority of American people are with us on policy. And we still can't seem to harness that into actual with the party. They could be with our policy, but they don't want to be with our party. Right. Republicans are the opposite. They totally disagree with the policy, but they still stick with the party. Right? And it's an identity thing. They don't want to be Democrats. They'd rather be Republicans, even though they disagree with everything in the Republican platform. Why is that? Because our team is cuckoo nuts half the time. That's why we don't have a brand unification. We could. It's not like we lack the talent to do that. Right. It's not like we lack the resources. We got the talent, the resources. We got all the cool kids are on our side. But their side plays to win.
Yeah, it's true.
And our side plays to be right.
Okay. Let me get a little bit more into that talking point on Florida. So I lived in Florida from 75 to 84. after I left.
The good old days.
The good old days. So I didn't realize when I was doing the research on you that Jagoff down in Florida has actually something in common with you. I hate to say it, but he does.
We were both Navy JAGs.
We were both Navy JAG officers.
I actually am very, 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 very good friends. And my dearest friend used to be his boss.
Right. And for the viewers, the Jagoff I'm talking about is Ron DeSantis, as I call him, who went into office on January 9th, 2019, as the Florida's 46th governor of the state. And the effing state has gone off the rails even worse than it was going off before. But what I want to ask you is this for the viewers: how bad we see the news, we see him. You know, this is my opinion. I can't stand him. I think he's Trump, but I think he's Trump with not a complete moron, that he understands how government works, politics, where Trump doesn't know. So
no, I disagree with your
okay.
analysis.
So go ahead.
I think he's 10 times more dangerous because he's not Trump 2.0. He's Putin 2.0.
Okay.
Right. Trump is about self-aggrandizement and embellishment. He needs all of the attention on him. He needs all of the limelight, and he likes all the fun and all the adulation. But Trump is fundamentally allergic to details. Like he's
Right.
not a substantive person in any way, shape, or form. And
Right.
It's all about personal relation and vendetta for him. But the meat and potatoes, the real substance of how to get things done, is not his bailiwick. Right. Putin, on the other hand, is a very different kind of guy. Putin's a micromanager.
You mean DeSantis?
No. I mean,
You call him Putin. Okay, go ahead.
Putin is not about bells and whistles, right?
Okay.
Putin is mafia. Like Putin is right. Like he's a mafia head with the mafia control, and he spins and thinks carefully about any entity that he's unhappy with, their weakness. And he's constantly thinking about how to exploit their weakness. He's tactical and clever and savvy. He's not all that smart, which is a different thing, right? But he's clever and he's focused, right? DeSantis is like that. DeSantis doesn't give a shit if he's liked. He gives a shit if he's feared. And he makes everybody around him afraid. Now, Trump does that too, but Trump needs the adulation. He needs the rallies. He needs the performance art. He needs the accoutrement, right? DeSantis doesn't need all of that. But he is so much more dangerous because he knows the law, he knows the Constitution, he knows the vulnerabilities of our system, he knows how to force people into complying with him. He got the entire Florida legislature to give up their own power on districting and hand it over to him. And most of those people never liked him. He was not supposed to be the gubernatorial nominee. It was supposed to be a guy named Adam Putnam, who was the Secretary of Agriculture. And DeSantis beat him by twisting the arm of certain Republicans that owed him or something. I don't know exactly how it happens because I'm not in the weeds of GOP politics in Florida. But let me tell you, Adam Putnam is tall, kind of auburn, redheaded guy, clean cut, much better looking, much better, more likable. DeSantis is Napoleonic.
Yeah.
Nobody likes.
No, I agree with you. I agree. That's what I'm saying. I think that DeSantis knows how to work where Trump has no idea how government works and all of that stuff. That's why I think DeSantis is more dangerous.
Your analysis is correct, but it's just people who think he's Trump 2.0 are missing it. He's Putin 2.0.
Okay. Do you think the Democrats have any chance of beating him for the governorship?
Hard to say. I would say they have a 10% chance, maybe 15.
That ain't a good chance, man. That's not good.
Well, here's the situation. There are a lot of people who are angry with him, and when you get enough people angry with somebody, they can vote him out. The problem is the Florida Democratic Party is a hot mess, and we refuse to learn, we refuse to build, and we refuse to grow, because it's just the attitude about Democrats and Republicans is so different. Like the Republican approach to elections is business. They hire professionals. They fund them year round, and they have the bottomless trough of the Chamber of Commerce pouring money into the GOP to make sure that they have the best data, the best people, the best track work, the best, infrastructure and all of that. And they're always, and they don't give a shit about their candidates. The candidate just steps into the machine. The machine runs the races. right? Candidates just step in. Democrats are the opposite, right? There is no machine. Every candidate has to build their own machine. Get a candidate that brings in a lot of money, they have a chance of being competitive. But if they don't, then they're not even going to be competitive at all, and the party doesn't care. It's never going to step in and fix that, right? Every candidate in the state of Florida on the Democratic side has to buy access to the basic voter roll. And for a congressional race, that could be upwards of $10,000. So half the candidates running as Democrats in the state of Florida don't even have access to the voter roll because they have to buy it through the party. And the party makes your cheapy little, state house candidate who doesn't have much money, they're going to make them buy that. So, of course, if they're buying access to the voter roll, they're not buying ads, banner ads, text messages, right? So it's just ridiculous. On the one hand, they say, oh, you should run for something. Why don't you run? You should run for office. And the minute you become a candidate and say, hey, can I get your help? They're like, no, we need to vet you. You're not right on climate for us. You're not, you know what? We don't like your approach to this. We put every candidate through the rack and the torture machines, and then wonder why nobody wants to run for office. On the Republican side, you run for office, you're cosseted. Unless you are viewed as enemy to somebody in power, if you're just a neutral, they don't know you, then you are cosseted, right? You are helped, you are given the money. You don't even have to figure out where the money is coming from. They will funnel it to you. So you don't have to spend your time on the phones like we do. You don't have to spend your time fundraising like you do. The machine will do it all.
Wow. Let me ask you this, Pam. For the viewers, wasn't the race close? Gillum didn't lose by that much, right?
He didn't lose at all, but the
Okay.
margin was 36,000 votes out of 22 million people. It was less than 1%.
Okay.
Right. And for those of us in the state, it was shocking because Gillum was in like rock star level energy. He was doing the biggest events. People all over the state were just on fire to vote for him. He got huge African-American turnout. He did fantastic. So how the hell did Ron DeSantis, who got waxed in the debates, had virtually no public events, how the hell did he turn out that many Republicans? Answer, he did not. The party turned them out for him. He was just the guy who stepped into the system. So what I tried to do after that race was say, hey guys, let's build our own system. Let's build a system that's equivalent to what the Republicans have. Let's build best data. Let's build voter infrastructure. Let's build a mechanism to help our candidates generate video and content. Let's have a buyer as a permanent staffer who buys time on radio and cable and gets our information placed in the front of the kind of communities that we have here in Florida, which are very unique. Let's have a centralized party in Orlando instead of Tallahassee. Let's have permanent year-round staff that's doing messaging, that's doing philanthropic work on the party. Let's have a branding guru that's got Democratic branding all over the state. Let's do all that. Everyone's like, nah, that's too expensive. We can't do all of that. And why don't we just do more vote by mail? I'm like, look, we spent Bloomberg spent $100 million on Biden ads in 1 month. 1 month, $100 million in television ads. And I said, hey, here's a 2-year plan, $10 million a year that would build us a lasting permanent voter contact infrastructure that talks to Democrats in our state year round. What people don't understand is that the Republican Party talks to Republican voters, both through Fox News and through mailers and ads and phone calls and contact year round. On the Democratic side, they think MSNBC is Democratic messaging. No, it's not.
No.
It's not. So we don't have a Fox News comparator, right? And nobody in the state of Florida talks to Democratic voters. No one, right? It is only campaigns that do that, and they do that during campaign season. The Florida Democratic Party does not talk to Florida Democratic voters. It talks to Florida Democratic Party members, the people who go to the clubs, the caucuses, who give money, who are donors. It talks to them. It does not talk to the voters. So for the duration of the year, a Democratic voter in the state of Florida is going to hear nothing from their party until a candidate pops up to talk to them. And then we wonder why they don't know what Joe Biden did, right? Then we wonder why they have no clue what our platform is, who our candidate. They don't know. Why would they know? We don't tell them. And that is a structural failure.
Right.
And it's not a structural failure that can be fixed with ads. So what I said was, hey, party, let's learn from our Gillum mistake. Let's learn from, Bill Nelson losing his seat by 12,000 votes. Let's learn from that and actually build this infrastructure. You know what I was told? Well, Pam, where's the proof that you are the person who should do this? When I say I made a plan, I'm not saying I said this is what we should do. I'm saying I wrote a 58-page proposal with plan of action and milestones, with a breakdown of where the African-American vote was, where the youth vote was, where the Latino vote was, where the immigrant vote was. I broke it down by with a strategic plan to recruit Democrats to the state, and a strategic plan to convert snowbirds into Florida voters, and a strategic plan to convert youth into voters. You know what they told me? Oh, no. The problem is that we're just not sure about you, Pam. And I'm like, well, what aren't you sure about? I have punched above my weight in every single election I've run in this state. I've been more efficient at turning out Democrats than any other candidate in this state. So what are you not sure about? Oh, well, you're not controllable. You're not sufficiently deferential, and you haven't played your dues. Yeah. All the bullshit, right? All the bullshit, right? And so now they're struggling to find people to run for office. Because we didn't do any of the building that I had suggested. So when my plan came out, everybody said, well, we got to wait to see what the party chair's plan is going to be, because he says he's got a plan, right? And his plan is going to be fabulous, So what has his plan generated? Has it generated record fundraising in the state of Florida? Hell the fuck no. Has it generated energy like we've never seen? Hell the fuck no. Like, what has it generated? Absolutely nothing. But everybody thought an older, established, wealthy Cuban, Miami power broker would be better for a party of Black people and women than a Black woman.
It's a mess. It's a mess.
And I'm not saying that it was he and I competed head to head for the chairmanship. We didn't. I couldn't even be considered for the chairmanship because the chair is so chosen by the clubs and caucuses and the executive committees. You can't even be considered unless you're a chair of an executive committee. I couldn't be a chair of an executive committee because I was a candidate, right? So if you're a candidate, you can't be a chair, right? But if you're running a business, shouldn't the head of that business be a person that's heads of business? Our entire system is designed to fail because it's based on this civic-minded, volunteer, let's just do our best attitude, not this business-minded or even better yet, mission-oriented mindset.
Right. It's a mess.
It's a mess. Yeah. And every time somebody steps up and says, hey, this is a mess, let's fix it, it becomes, well, you're not being very loyal and you shouldn't be so critical. And, you're not part of the team. And I'm like, dude, the things that we're trying to get done are just too important to leave to chance.
Right.
We're trying to protect Black people. We're trying to protect our children.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to protect our vote. We're trying to protect the Constitution of the United States of America.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell are you talking about? Your little club and caucus is going to turn out the vote. No, it is not. In Florida, clubs and caucuses are on a good day, 50, 100 people, most of whom are retirees. I love my clubs and caucuses. Let me tell you, I've spoken more of them than just about anybody in our state. They're great people with good hearts who do good work. They work hard, but can they turn out 36,000 votes in the county? Not only no, hell no.
So talking about race, which you mentioned in there, let's go to that talking point. So let me preface it with this. I'm in an interracial relationship and I have a biracial son. And something that drives me fucking nuts, and I don't understand it. I want to ask you, as a Black woman, you have people like, and I say their names, I know what you're going to say, the Candace Owens, the Tim Scotts, the Larry Elders, Herschel Walker, and people like that I feel absolutely sell out the African-American race, don't give a fuck. Candace Owens is making a lot of money off of it and can get people hurt and killed with their rhetoric, okay? What is it that, why do you feel that they feel the need that they have to do that? Besides for the money aspect.
I think there are two things, right? You have to understand the sickness of a personality that is entirely built on external validation. And that's a lot of things that people don't understand about politics generally. 90% of politics is personality, 10% is policy. Personality is broken down in my mind into two kinds of personalities, and they're the poles of a continuum, right? On the right extreme pole, you have the extreme conformist, and on the left, you have this extreme anarchist, right? You have the person who questions everything and the person that conforms to everything. Most of us are somewhere in the middle of that continuum, probably more to one side or the other, and that's why our politics are viewed as left and right. But what motivates a person on the right is the sense that things will be good when people conform to doing certain things that are expected. And so the more you are to the right, the less tolerant you are of people who don't do those things. The more convinced you are that your good life and your good things are the result of your good choices and your good conduct. So if somebody has a bad life, it must be their choices and it must be their conduct, right? So you don't accept that it's a greater environment that puts you on a path to success because you think you made all these choices and you did all these sacrifices and you did all this good stuff and that's why you are where you are, right? The anarchistic or the more questioning personality chafes at being told what to do, chafes at the idea that there's some norm and they find their validation within, right? Like, am I happy, right? Do I find something that's fulfilling to me? And because happiness is important to me, happiness in others is important to me as well. So if you're harmed, if somebody's hurting or suffering, we care, that's empathetic, right? I'm empathetic. I think that there's something terribly wrong and I want to do something to help. Whereas the more conservative personality is like, well, you got them, but you made your bed, you lie in it, right? Like, so those are two different kinds of personality types. And so you have that amongst every population out there, every population from the dawning of time, it has people more on, the conformist personality type and the more questioning personality type. Okay, fine. When you ask the question about Black people, right? There are Black people that are in that same continuum, right? The conformist and the empathetic, right? Now, those who have been under the yoke of racism tend to be more empathetic to others who are under the yoke of unfairness and injustice. They tend to be, but not always. Because there can be a mindset in the Black community about conforming to something they believe put you on the right path. And in the Black community is often religion, right? It is very often this idea that I have conformed myself to what God expects of me, what my religion tells me is the right thing. And I have done these things and therefore I am correct and righteous and in the right path. And all of these other people who don't choose to do that, they're on the wrong path. They're dangerous. They're problematic. They're awful. They're not as good as me. And that personality type can be easily manipulated into believing that they are inherently better than something else. And if you look at those Black people, be it Tim Scott, Candace Owens, Herschel Walker, Larry Elder, and it's growing on the Black side, believe it or not. The number of Black conservatives is growing because it's easy to weaponize the disdain for the other. And so in their case, it starts out with disdain for Black women. Then it is disdain for immigrants. And then it is disdain for gay. And so what you have in a Herschel Walker or in a Jason Whitlock is a Black man who hates Black women more than he hates white supremacists. You have a Black man who hates immigrants or gay people more than he hates white supremacists because the white supremacists are preaching the same macho bullshit that he buys into.
Misogyny too, right?
It's a misogyny. It's a hatred. It's a sense of the loss of the masculine. So you can build this coalition around the loss of the masculine, right? And Candace Owens and Kathy Barnett are women, Black women, who have bought into this idea that there needs to be a renaissance of the man and that the woman is responsible for this renaissance of the man. If you listen to what they're talking about, right? And it is hatred.
Yeah.
It is hatred of immigrants, hatred of gay people, hatred of liberals, hatred of young people. It's hatred of anybody who doesn't believe in Christian doctrine.
But Pam, let me ask you this, and I agree with everything you just said. But with Candace Owens, and look, I lived in the South. I was stationed in Pensacola. People don't want to hear this, maybe, and you know this better than me. You're in the South. There's a lot of Black people, older Black people, that are very conservative.
Yep.
And are actually Republicans, and I don't have no problem with that. But the problem is,
I do.
This. Well, I understand, but what I'm saying is this part though. Candace Owens aligns herself with Trump, who is an out and out fucking racist, who out and out it's all lies. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
I'm not a fan of the Republican Party, but if you were conservative because those were your beliefs in the past, we could at least have a conversation. We completely disagree. But today's times, all of it is lies.
But understand who Candace Owens was. Right?
She was a Democrat before she was a Republican.
No, she was a failure before she was a Republican.
Well, that too.
She was a nothing before she was a Republican.
Right.
She was a no one before she was a Republican. And what happened is when she started spewing Republican stuff, she saw her follows go up and up and up and up and up. And then all of a sudden she realized that she could be special and unique, because you can't be special and unique as a Black woman on the Democratic side, because there's just too many Black women of substance for you to compete against. But on the Republican side, you can be a unicorn.
Yeah.
And that is the way she's being treated, as a unicorn.
But yet you only have one Black elected senator, Tim Scott.
Well, we only have one Black elected senator too. So
That's true.
Let's not get it twisted.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. You're right. I forgot about that.
But Candace Owens is a different, I think she's a little bit different story than Kathy Barnett. Like Candace Owens, maybe not, but Candace Owens was like diamond and silk, right? It was a joke at first, it was gaming, right? And then it became real. And then she became more and more ensconced. And she could figure out what she needed to say to get white people to be like, see, we have a Black woman who agrees with us. We're not racist, even though what we're saying is totally racist. What she's telling us is it's not racist because it doesn't bother her. Therefore, it can't possibly be racist, right? Like, but she's the most unsophisticated thinker there ever was.
Yeah.
Right? Same as Kathy Barnett, dumb as a doorknob.
Yeah.
Right?
MAGA before Trump, she says.
Whatever, she's a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Right? Women of Black women of substance do not hang with that crowd. You know, the people who got degrees, the Ketanji Brown Jacksons, the people, the Sherilyn Eiffels, the people who are substantive, Black women of substance do not hang with that trash. Right? The Black women who are on the GOP are getting paid, are getting elevated, are getting celebrated, have an easy path. And I know this to be true because what people don't understand about when I ran for Senate was that when I ran for Senate in Florida, I got approached by the Republican Party not once, but twice to convert to Republican because they thought my resume was awesome. And they would have given me all the money in the world to run as a Republican. And at the time, I probably could have. I didn't have a social media presence, right? I hadn't been, right? If I had picked the Republican side, I'd be sitting in the Senate right now because they would have given me everything I needed to be successful. Why? I was a former military, foreign service, all these languages. I was the archetypal Black woman for the Republican Party.
Right.
And I said, not only no, hell no, because there's this little technical problem about you being racist as shit.
Yeah.
But had I made the choice that Candace Owens made, I'd probably be sitting in the Senate right now.
Yeah. That's a shame, but I believe it. I believe it. Let me ask you this. I want to talk about something that we agree on, and I got a tweet I want to read of yours. You said on Twitter, you said there is no daylight between a racist and someone who will vote for a racist, which I think is absolutely correct. So I have this thing, one of my talking points that I say, they always want to make excuses for Aunt June or Uncle Steve. He's 75 years old. He watches Fox. He's brainwashed. He's this, that, and the other. And this is how I feel. I'm like, you know what? Bullshit. I'm not saying that can't happen, but this is how I feel. I feel that he was like that when he was 35 years old. He just didn't have a vessel like Trump that made it very comfortable. Trump didn't start racism in this country. No. He made it comfortable where you could say it openly, and it was a great thing to be. And we always, even on the left, they always want to make excuses for people and their bad behavior and their racism and their misogyny and their narcissism and being a traitor because they're old or they're brainwashed by Fox. But that tweet that you said, there's no difference between the two. If you
Well, that's
support it, right or wrong.
Yeah, no, that's true. But I think people misunderstand this concept of racism, right? Like, because they feel, and sometimes I have to use this analogy for them. Okay, so let's just say back in the day, we're talking slavery. There's a slave, he's on the pillory and he's getting whipped, right? There's the owner that ordered the whipping. There's the man that's doing the whipping. There's the people in the crowd that is cheering the whipping. And then there's the people under the tree having a picnic, ignoring the whipping, right? To the slave, who is responsible in that chain? Answer: everyone. Everyone. Right? And the same is true for the Jew that was in Auschwitz.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There was the Hitler who ordered it. There was Himmler who pulled it off. There was the soldier that was in there whipping him or killing them or whatever. There was the people in the community that were cheering it on, and there were people in the community that were ignoring it. Who's responsible for that?
All of them.
All of them. All of them. Because if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing with racism, is that everybody feels, there's a lot of folks that feel that racism has to be personal animus towards a person. And so for a white mind that thinks that way, when you say, well, I have Black friends, that necessarily means that you are now not racist because you have Black friends. But what you're ignoring is that racism is not necessarily animus towards an individual. Racism is perpetuation of a system that keeps a certain kind of person subordinated and not equal to you. And if you are comfortable with disequality to yourself, you are racist. It's not animus. I don't hate you, but I don't want you to be equal to me. That is racist. Because I can say without any equivocation that there is not an American, there's not a citizen, there's not even an immigrant that I think is less American than me. I don't need anybody to have less than me. I want everybody to have what I have. Everybody. Full stop. I want you to have the mobility I have. I want you to have the access that I have. I want you to have the knowledge, the education, the opportunity. I want you to have what I have and then some. I don't need nobody to have less than me. And I'm not okay with anybody having less than me. Period.
I agree.
So for me, if I see somebody getting fucked over, I don't care whether they're gay, they're straight, they're trans, they're Black, they're white, they're immigrant, they're new, they're old, they're disabled or whatever. I don't give a shit. I will go to the wall for you because I feel like you having what I have is important to protecting me having what I have. And that's why I come at it at a different angle. I want nobody to have less than I have. I don't want nobody to live in poverty. I don't want nobody to live in fear or pain or suffering. I don't want that for no one. And so my mission is to make sure that everybody okay. Everybody okay. Nobody above, nobody below, everybody okay. That's my mission. And we'll see if it works. I'm gonna keep at it.
Okay. Vice presidential debate 2020. Pence gets asked, do you believe there's systemic racism? And before they can even get racism out, he says no, which is bullshit. What goes through your mind when you hear a statement like that?
He's happy with me being subordinate to him. That's what he's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
He's comfortable with that. He's good with that. And he's going to perpetuate all the things that make that so. I don't think there's systemic racism. You know, how many cities in this country that you can go to and you can find a Black neighborhood? Do you think that happened by happenstance? It's just accidental. We just have a magnetic affinity for each other. Like that dude is a straight up bullshit liar, but they all are, whatever. But that's, yes, there is absolutely systemic racism. It's in everything that we do, and especially in the work that I do. And so I am no longer in-house counsel for some big corporation. I've taken all of that knowledge and experience and that storytelling capacity and that energy and that magnetism, and I put it to changing policing from the inside out. So I represent police officers. I represent Black female police officers and whistleblowing police officers against their own police departments. Good. To change the blue code of silence from
and I always talk about this. I believe I don't back the blue. I don't believe in that. I back individual good cops. I've seen some. I've seen more rotten ones, but I've seen some good ones too. But I commend you for that. But do you see these things and it's all this back. And see, I was talking to Debbie, who's my better half. I said, I don't even understand where people's integrity is anymore. Because if it was me, if I was a police chief, even if it wasn't popular, and some shit came out, I would want to get out in front of it and be like, that's not my department. I don't condone that. It's like, for example, I'll give you, for example, you'll remember.
You're talking a lot of shit, man. You're wrong. You don't know. You gotta learn a culture. You gotta learn a culture before you can talk shit about it. Because let me tell you something. Every police chief that gets to be a police chief was raised in a culture. Just like every admiral was raised in Navy culture. Every general was raised in Army culture. The idea that you're going to be raised up in some culture and then turn on that culture, not true.
Well, I can't speak for me. I'm not standing by for that shit.
You're not, but let me tell you, right. So I have a case.
So I'd be out.
Right? You'd be out. Exactly.
Okay, then I'd be out.
Then you'd be out. So you wouldn't be police chief. That's what I'm trying to tell you.
Right. You wouldn't make that. Right. I hear you.
Right. So I have a case right now. In fact, we're going to hearing on Friday. As one of the most sharply pointed analyses of the Blue Code of Silence with respect to whistleblowing on police misconduct. It's a fascinating case. But the issue is, you have to understand what police officers value. I mean, granted, they value loyalty to each other, but more than anything, they value their pensions.
They're what? Say it again.
Pensions. They value their pensions.
Yeah.
You know why they value their pensions? Because they're the most generous and safe pensions out there, right? They're the last, one of the few, besides firefighters, who get these defined benefit pension plans. They're the last until they're dead. So once you get your pension, you're good for life. You do your 20, you're good. And so what happens is, if there's a sense that there's something that's going to threaten their pension, then they're going to run, not walk the other way. Now, currently, what threatens your pension is violating the Blue Code of Silence. If you speak up, pretty soon you're going to find yourself the subject of a code red. You're going to find yourself subject to this harassing, bullying, isolating, pushing you out behavior because you ratted out somebody and they don't want to work with you no more. They don't trust you, whatever.
You're not safe on a call. You get shot, whatever.
Exactly. So you become terrorized in your own workplace. That is what is currently happening, right? But at the same time, police leadership, especially those that are sort of answerable on a political level, are saying, oh, no, we need to have this active bystander training and the George Floyd policing and the federal and the executive orders and all this stuff, that we need to mandate that police officers, report misconduct when they see it. And I'm like, why do you think you need to mandate that? Well, the answer is because they're never going to do it on their own.
Yeah.
But the thing is that what's stupid about that is mandating that they report it and then not protecting them once they do is useless. It's useless. So, because they're never gonna report. If there's a chance that they're gonna lose their gig, if they do, they're never gonna do that. So long as you allow retaliation against whistleblowers, they're not going to whistleblow.
Right.
It's A, then B proposition. It is that simple. If you are going to get bullied, harassed out of your job for whistleblowing, then you ain't whistleblowing no matter what the hell they tell you to do.
Yeah.
So I am in the crucible of that analysis right now in front of a judge in the District of Columbia, where he's literally taking on this argument that if you don't protect a whistleblower before they're retaliated against or while they're being retaliated against, put them back to work 2 years from now ain't gonna work.
And you had Trump, and what you just said, you had Trump do that with Vindman, with Alexander.
Exactly. Exactly. And he couldn't get a TRO. He couldn't get a temporary restraining order. So we're in front of a judge on a motion for a temporary restraining order to stop the retaliation happening. Right. And that's so rare. It is incredibly rare. And it's a very unique case. It's very unique posture. And I am a very unique litigator, right? Like I am aggressive as all get out.
No, not you.
But my goal is for the judge to understand that this case law that's developed on this idea that, well, if you get fired, you could be compensated with money. Well, yeah, that may be true. But what is the impact on the people around you? Are they ever going to volunteer to step up in the name of the public?
Yeah.
Because it's not whistle protection. It's not a whistleblower protection act. It's a whistleblower martyrdom act.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like they're expecting you to give up your employment, give up your vacation, putting your kid in college, doing your, like all the stuff that gives you your family financial stability and health care, right? You're supposed to give that up in order to report fraud, waste, and abuse or misconduct of police officers. What the fuck are you talking about? They're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. So don't talk about all this active bystander bullshit. Don't. Right? It doesn't mean anything if you are not going to protect the people who speak up.
And you know what? I concede that point to you. You're correct. I wouldn't have made it to the police chief level. But let me ask you this, and then we're going to segue one more talking point before we go into the second half of the conversation. So I agree that is a fair assessment that you, Brad, you wouldn't make it to that level if you felt that way. Okay. So with that said, let's go back to for example. You remember when Trump opened his mouth when he was president, maybe first year he was in Texas, and he said, rough him up. When you put him in the car, rough him up. And then the next day, I don't know which city it was, they came out, the police said, we don't condone that. We don't condone what the president said. Do you know if there was any blowback on the person that said that?
I don't know. I don't even know what city you're referring to, so I don't want to talk out of my neck. As far as I know, the laws are pretty clear. You're not allowed to rough them up. You're not allowed to
right, but Trump said that. Trump literally said
but that's that mafia macho crap.
Right.
There are consequences for shit like that. So no. But the thing is, it's about prevention. Like we want to prevent that kind of stuff. And we want to change the mindset. And like I said, I have so much respect for police officers that do a very difficult job.
I do too.
But I will tell you something. The archetypal police officer, the one that you're going to trust the most to do their job without overreacting, is a female police officer. And most especially a Black female police officer. Black female police officers are the ones that do the best in policing the Black community because they can police with bravery, intensity, and empathy.
Okay. One more talking point I want to get into. I want to read another one of your tweets because I agree with this. You said, one of the main reasons I left the Catholic Church was its blatant misogyny. The other was its hypocrisy and total moral bankruptcy when it came to sexual abuse. I am repeatedly reminded that I made the right call. I missed how you say this word, L-I-T.
Liturgy.
Yeah, nice. Is that a lawyer word?
No, it's a Catholic word.
Okay.
It means the mass,
okay.
The bells and the whistles. And
okay. Sometimes I don't miss the cray judgy. So here's my question for you, ma'am. You see more and more since Trump, I'm not saying it didn't happen before, but you see it more and more in churches. Let's go, Brandon. And these mega churches screaming it. So the separation of church and state ain't there no more. So I'm putting this on President, as I got a lot of respect for President Biden's administration, but I'm putting on the Biden administration. When the hell are they going to go after these churches and take their tax exemption away?
They're not going to, so don't expect them to, because there's no way to segregate out the Black churches from the white churches, and the Black churches are too important to the center of Black power, so they're not going to touch it. So don't.
And why should they even say it? Why talk about it? It's just a talk. I mean, I'm talking about they do.
This is one of those things where you're like, it ought to be the courts that handle this, or DOJ that handles this, and not the admin that handles this. This is really not a political issue. It's a enforcement of the law issue. We still have a serious problem with enforcement of the law, and we don't enforce the law against conservative white people. We just don't. Why the hell are so many billionaires getting away with tax evasion and tax cheating? Because the IRS doesn't go after rich people who can afford strong lawyers. It would much rather go after the mom and pop shop or the small business who can't afford a big powered lawyer and make them pay the price for, underpaying their taxes or, missing some, whatever, because it's low hanging fruit, right? That's the morally bankrupt attitude, but it's an attitude that's been enforced at IRS for some time. So, our biggest problem is DOJ is morally bankrupt. Our biggest problem is that our law enforcement capacity of all the things on the Trump admin, and if you read my tweets, you know how much I hate this dude. There is nothing failing in the American people more than Merrick Garland, right? Nothing is destroying our democracy more than his passivity and his allegiance to the GOP. Nothing. It's the heart of everything that is wrong. If he, imagine, just go back with me. Imagine if January 21, we, instead of, announcing that, that Merrick Garland was going to be the nominee, he announces that somebody like Preet Bharara or Sally Yates or Glenn Kirshner is going to be the Attorney General. Within a month, half of the GOP would be under investigation, trying to cut deals and roll on each other, right? You would have search warrants being issued and executed on half the GOP, the RNC, the NRA.
Yeah.
Right? Their documents would be all over the place, right? And they'd be running out, walking to try to cut deals.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Half of them would be announcing their retirements,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the other half some of them would be in so much trouble, they'd be detained before. So you'd have empty seats in the Senate and in the House.
Mm-hmm. Glenn's a friend of mine. I know he would do it. I know Glenn
and I know
do
he would do it, and I know he would do it well, and I know he would do it quickly, and I know he would do it fearlessly.
Yeah.
So where would we be right now if that had actually happened? Well, you would have had a whole bunch of special elections that probably would have been filled with Republicans, but not that kind of Republicans, right? You would have a whole bunch of destabilization about this concept of the Republicans getting reelected, right? The Supreme Court definitely would have taken a step back from where we were, because they would have been like, this may not be the time, right? Like, we would be in a completely different place.
But
right
Pam,
now.
Back to what you said a little bit earlier about the Black community in Auschwitz with the Jewish people, where people are responsible. President Biden is the president. He put him in that spot. So he's responsible for this.
Absolutely, no question.
People don't want to say that, but it's the truth.
I'm speaking the truth.
No, I know you are,
Him,
but I'm saying, but a lot of people don't like to hear that.
They don't like to hear it because they like him. He's a likable president. He's a likable guy. He is a likable guy.
He is.
He's a decent, good human being. He's done some very good things. He's made some good choices. He's also made some really bad choices. But we've got to be honest. All right.
Yes.
Like, there is zero chance that Biden didn't know that Garland was going to give the GOP a pass. There is zero chance. Why? Because every single member of his cabinet was vetted inside and out, upside and down ways. Yeah. You don't appoint Pete Buttigieg. You don't appoint Deb Haaland. You don't appoint anybody to your cabinet without going deep into their background and deep into their attitude and what they're going to do. They got to support your agenda. So if you think that somehow Merrick Garland got chosen for the Attorney General and Biden had no clue there's going to be this passive wet doormat, you're crazy. And the way you know that Biden knew that he was going to be like this is because Biden hasn't gotten rid of him.
Yeah.
Right. Because if Biden was truly upset with this dude, he'd have gotten rid of the dude. Don't tell me he can't do that. He doesn't have the votes to confirmation. He could have had an AG in place, an interim AG for 210 days without even having a vote.
Trump AG.
Of course.
Everybody was interim.
Of course. Don't tell me this nonsense. It's total nonsense. If Biden had a problem with Merrick Garland, he would have moved Merrick Garland out by now. He doesn't. He wants the stability and the predictability that is presented by the status quo situation. Just let everybody just kind of be, because he fears Republican backlash more than he fears Republican success. And that is crazy.
Okay, let's do this. Let's come completely off all of these hot topics. We're going to have some fun random questions. This is how the viewers get to know you as a person and a human being. There's no wrong answer. So whatever you say is what we're rolling with. What is your favorite genre of movies?
Romantic comedy.
Okay. Do you have a movie that you could watch over and over again, never gets old?
Sound of Music.
Oh, good one. Good one. Okay. Rosanna Arquette just talked about The Sound of Music. Julie Andrews. Okay. Do you have a legal, I know you said romantic comedies, but is there a legal movie that you critique the actor and said, he or she, they played a pretty good lawyer. They were believable. Who do you think?
A legal movie. Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Atticus.
Atticus Finch.
Yep. Okay. All right. Do you have a favorite actor?
But do I have a favorite actor? Yes, I do. His name is Paul Newman.
Okay. So you didn't like him in The Verdict? You know, that he was a lawyer in that, Frank Galvin.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he was a good lawyer. Pretty much everything about Paul Newman.
Okay.
I like.
All right, flip that. Do you have a favorite actress?
Um, Viola Davis.
Okay. Do you have it? It could be from any time, old or new, a favorite TV show?
Remington Steele.
Oh, Pierce Bronson. Good one. Okay. Going back. Do you have a favorite? Sometimes the favorites are hard, but a musical band you like to work out to, or you like to play in the car or whatever?
That is so, so hard. A band. Okay, so I'm going to be technical. I got to tell you, my favorite band
Okay.
is Mint Condition,
I love Mint Condition.
because they're like legitimate artists who play instruments
Mhm.
and like write their music and all of that. I love Mint Condition.
Okay. See, you're making it easy. I mean, people are usually like, oh, I get it. You give me 10. Okay. If somebody were to play you in a movie and you could pick who it was, who would you like it to be?
Ooh, that's a very, very good one. Probably Zoe Kravitz.
Okay. Debbie and I just liked her in the new Did you see her in the new Batman?
She kind of badass.
Yeah, she is. She is. She was good in the new Batman. Okay. Off the top of your head, first one that comes to your mind, favorite childhood memory.
Oh, I don't really have a good childhood memory in the sense that I don't remember a lot from my childhood. But if I had to say my favorite childhood memory, okay, I was living in Brazil. I was probably 12 years old. And back then you had to order from the Spiegel catalog all your Christmas presents and your clothes. And you would have the Spiegel catalog like 2 months before Christmas or whatever. We had to order weeks and weeks ahead because for it to get to Brazil at the time. And I had, my brother and I had designated time with the Spiegel catalog. And we would have like a color coded, priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3. And I'd picked, at the time I was into crafty things. So I picked like a latch and hook rug that you can make with a little hook, and I little painted by numbers and things, clothes that I really wanted. And my father, had a few presents under the tree, but he had most of the gifts at his office, And my brother and I, we were so clever. We were trying to figure out what present was which. And we'd shake the boxes and we'd try to take the tape off to see if we could take a pic. And somehow, some way, and I still don't know how he did it, my father managed to sneak 2 bicycles into the house on Christmas Eve without either of us knowing or noticing. And I remember after we opened all the presents, he had one last present. He opened the door to the bathroom and there were these brand new bicycles.
Oh.
And oh my God, like it was freedom. It was, I could go all over the place. I just remember the joy and the surprise and the sense of delight and all of my expectations being blown out of the water, And so that was a very fun memory for me.
Okay. Do you have a favorite noise or sound you like to hear?
Coffee percolating in the morning.
Okay. Flip it. Least favorite noise or sound.
The voice of the person who masqueraded as president of this country in the last administration.
Okay. Do you have a favorite food?
Cake.
Okay. What kind of cake?
I like yellow cake with chocolate frosting out of a box.
Okay.
Now, do I have more sophisticated palate that can appreciate every other kind of dessert and baked good? Yes, I do. But my comfort food is yellow cake with chocolate frosting.
Okay. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Yellow cake with chocolate frosting.
Okay. Look at that, same answer. Okay. What is the first job you ever had?
I was an aerobics instructor.
Okay.
So I was just finishing high school, and it was in the 80s. I graduated in the 80s, and remember the aerobics was a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got a job at a big Gold's Gym. It is now a Gold's Gym. Back then it was something else. I don't remember why. And my job was to be the aerobics instructor. So I had choreographed aerobics classes and I taught aerobics classes. And that was my first gig. And it was my first paycheck. I got paid $4.25 an hour. And I thought that was, a big deal. when I was not instructing aerobics, I was helping people learn the machines. And, back then you didn't need a certification, you didn't need education, you didn't need nothing. You just needed to know how to work the machine.
Okay.
And so that was my first gig.
Okay. If you could hit the lottery, if you hit the lottery, I should say, tomorrow, 200, 300, $400 million lottery, what's the first thing you do?
The first thing I would do is probably, oh gosh, I mean, assuming, can I put aside like paying off my house and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. If it, given the current political circumstances, I would probably pour it into building infrastructure to save democracy. But if it were, after November and we had saved democracy, then I would pour it into starting rural, starting sort of residential academies for children at high risk, and giving them an opportunity for a different kind of life.
Okay, very commendable. Do you have a favorite vacation destination anywhere in the world?
Oh, yes. I have a Jones for Italy. I've been 5 times. And every time I go back, I learn something new. I see something new. I fall back in love with Italian food and wine. Fall back in love with Italian design and clothes and stuff. But Italy is the place that I have to just keep going back over and over and over again. And I've been to many, many, many places on this planet, right? Like I've been all over. I've been to Australia, I've been to New Zealand, and which is beautiful. I've been to Scotland, I've been all over. Like I've been a lot of places. And yet every few years I start to get this Jones, like I need to go back to Italy. Like I need to go somewhere in Italy. And so that's my favorite place.
Okay, yeah, I got to go back. I was stationed there during the Gulf War in Sigonella, Sicily.
Yep.
I've been back in over 30. I want to go back so bad. I love Italy. Okay, if you could meet one person from any time in history, they could be dead or alive, any walk of life, who would you like to meet, and what would either be your first question or something you'd like to talk to them about? Anybody.
Shirley Chisholm, no question.
Okay.
And my first question is, how did you know you were the one?
Okay.
How did you know you were the one?
That's a good one. That's a good one. With everything we discussed today, Pam, if you had to sum yourself up as a human being in a few thoughts, what would you say?
I would say that I am a ferocious person. I'm ferociously fearless. I'm ferociously aggressive. I am ferociously dogged. I don't do anything in half measures, but I'm also deeply, deeply empathetic. Like passionately care about others and about the innocent and about humanity and about the planet and about animals. And so I feel like I am a warrior goddess for the good.
Okay.
And I think that that's perfectly okay.
It is perfectly okay.
Because too much of good is associated with weak and soft. And I think you could be like a crusader. You could be ferocious and dogged and determined and relentless in the name of good, if as much, if not more so than those who are dogged and relentless in the name of that.
And I agree with you, because one of my quotes that I say is, kindness is strength, and people that tell you it's not are actually the weak ones, because it's not the easiest thing to be kind, especially to people that you want to choke the fuck out of. But let's be honest. Let's be honest. But so I absolutely agree with you. The final question I always close out the conversation on is it could be your own, or it could be one that's been around for 100 years or more. Do you have a saying you live your life by? And if so, what is the saying?
Yeah, I guess I do now. I hadn't had one before, but I do now. And my saying is fuck around and find out.
Now, look at your Twitter feed. I would say that's pretty much true. Okay. What I would like you to do for the viewers, put out your social media platforms where they can find you.
You can find me online at Center for Employment Justice. That's the name of my firm, centerforemploymentjustice.com. You can find me on Twitter at Pam Keith FL. That's the letter F as in Frank and L as in Larry, at Pam Keith FL. You can find me on Facebook. I think I still have Pam Keith FL on Facebook. I'm also Pam Keith FL on Twitter. I mean, on Instagram, although I don't spend much time on Instagram. So if you really want to talk to me, find me on Twitter. And you know, what's interesting is that people do often reach out to me from my social media. They'll email me or they'll call me, most times with just wanting to have a discussion, sometimes with praise, oftentimes with death threats, but yeah, such as La Vida Loca. But yeah, I enjoy engaging with people, and I enjoy talking about the issues, and I also enjoy presenting solutions for, you know, and before we go, I do want to tell you about my idea about the VA. We didn't get a chance to talk about that.
Go ahead.
So I have 2 ideas for the VA. First idea is that I think that the Veterans Administration should not be a standalone administration in the domestic discretionary spending. I think it should be wrapped up in military spending, so that every time a head is brought into the military, it is automatically also funding an additional fund at the VA for that person. So there's always a one-to-one relationship between the funding of the VA and funding of the military, so that you're not constantly begging for more funding for VA. That's number one. Number two, I think we should completely turn on its head the VA claims process. Because right now, the VA claims process is that you put in a claim, and then you have to prove your military service. Then you have to prove that your injury is militarily connected. And it could be years after the fact.
Yep.
Then you have to figure out like all of this other stuff. And I feel like it should be the other way. Since they have the records, why make you have to go find all this stuff? Why make you have to go find affidavits of people that you jumped out of planes with in Vietnam? Like, why make you do that? I say, if you're injured or ill, and it could potentially be service connected, even remotely, they have 90 days to disprove that it is service connected. And if they can't disprove that it is service connected in 90 days, they pay you and keep it fucking moving. In my view, if that means that they pay way more claims, yes. And?
Okay.
But what that means is every veteran who put their life on the line for their country will be treated with dignity and respect, and not sitting around waiting for their claims to be paid for 2 or 3 years at a time.
I agree. I think those are 2 decent solutions. They have to listen to you, of course, which that's, you know, but you know what? Honestly, those are common sense solutions. But that's the thing with government. It's like, where the fuck is the common sense? It's like common sense solution. But let's back up before I close out with my thoughts and give you back the mic to close out. Your center, if you would, for the viewers, for your current thing, give them your mission statement. What is it?
We represent women, minorities, and whistleblowers in the workplace. Our job is to make sure that your civil rights extend to your work environment as much as every other aspect of your life.
So are you out of Florida with that? Or are you out of DC? Or?
I'm out of Washington, DC.
Okay.
So I live in Florida, but I practice in DC.
Okay, I got you. Okay, I'm going to close out like this. You mentioned the word humanity. That's what my show is all about. I would want to have people on that are moving humanity forward. I don't care if they're outspoken. I don't care if they curse. I don't care if they're a man, woman, white, black, straight, gay, whatever. I don't care, because we're all in this fight for humanity together, the people that want to be on the right side of history. Then we have the other side. So I appreciate that you use your Twitter feed. If you're not aware of her Twitter feed, don't be shy, because she is not. She's going to curse. She's going to call people small penises and dicks and everything else that she wants to, because it's her Twitter feed. Just like I curse on mine. I hate when people tell me, you shouldn't do that. Okay, then keep scrolling. Don't look at my Twitter feed.
My Twitter feed is not a safe space for everyone.
Exactly. But I commend you for moving humanity forward. I commend you for standing on your stances, not backing down. You're on the left like I am, but you're fair. You call it as you see it. And people on the left, some people, I'm not saying all, you need to get a lot tougher and face what really is, and not with this fantasy or this bubble that you want to be in. So I commend you for that, Pam. You got access to me as things come up. If something you need to talk about, come on for smaller segments. I'll bring you back on at your undisclosed locations and whatever, and we'll go from there. What I want to do now is give you back the mic. You close out with anything you want to say.
I will say this, we are in very unique times, and everybody's got to in the fight. Because if you're not in the fight to save democracy, you're on the sidelines letting it go. So get in the fight. And it's not just voting. It's influencing everybody in your life to vote too. And make sure that they vote Democrat up, down, and sideways. Not because the Democrats deserve your vote, but because the Republicans deserve your scorn.
Okay. And I would be remiss, I was going to ask you this earlier, but I'm going to ask you this in closing. Your lawyer mind and your human heart, is Trump going to be found guilty on anything that sends him to prison, renders him ineligible to run in 2024, or fine him a shitload of money? He's never going to be destitute because they'll give him money, but render him unable to run or go to prison.
No, if that was going to happen, it would have happened months ago. This idea that somehow it's going to take all this time to put together a case against him, that's total nonsense. I mean, just on one issue, I mean, the Mueller report was open and closed case of obstruction, the colluding with Russia. If they were serious about holding this guy accountable for anything, they would have done so a long time ago. I mean, when he took classified documents home, you know how to handle classified information. I know how to handle classified information. If he took classified information home and was benefiting it and selling it and putting it in crates and handling it like it was, you know, toilet paper, they could have prosecuted him on that. That's an open and shut. He called the Secretary of State of Georgia. That's an open and shut. Like, they don't want to prosecute this guy because they don't want the fallout. They don't want the destabilization, or they don't want, they're fearful. I mean, ultimately, if France could survive imprisoning Sarkozy, then the United States can survive imprisoning Trump. But we're chicken shits, and that is a problem of my side. I love being a Democrat. I will never be anything but a Democrat, but my team is full of chicken shits. I mean, that's just true.
Okay. On that note, we'll close out there, and we'll see what happens next time. And I will see you on Twitter. And again, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, and have a great rest of the Memorial Day weekend.
You too. Hey, folks,
Bye-bye.
That's another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Yet another person who is moving humanity forward. Pam Keith. I knew that she was going to bring the fire. She don't pull no punches on Twitter. She's my kind of guest. So make sure you retweet this show. Make sure you subscribe. Tell everybody you know to subscribe, because I appreciate every single one of my subscribers and all the support that I get from my BBB crew and from all the others around the world that support this show. Thank you so much, because it really is all about moving humanity forward. That's all that is my life's mission at this point, day in and day out. All right, folks, and remember, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Bad Brad out. Thank you for watching the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show. Please follow, subscribe, leave comments, forget about it, and move humanity forward.